Chapter 1. Dad, Mom, I've agreed to come back to our hometown, go on blind dates, and get married. I'll be back at the end of this month. Early spring was still cold. Rosalie Atwood was on the phone as she opened her door, her soft voice drifting away with the curtain of rain. She pulled her collar tighter, hearing her parents let out a long sigh of relief on the other end. Rosalie, dear, your mom and I haven't been in the best health these past few years. We just hope you can settle down soon. It's good you've thought it through. When you get back, I'll have your Aunt Lana Evans arrange for you to meet a few suitable young men. Hearing that her parents had already started making arrangements, Rosalie's eyes flickered, a sense of unreality washing over her. After a few more pleasantries, the call ended. She glanced around the apartment, then went into the bedroom and began to clear things out. A thick stack of love letters in the drawer, several photo albums of secretly taken pictures hidden in the closet, and years' worth of diaries on the bookshelf, all about her unrequited love, all connected to that person named Julian Kingsley. Now she tossed them into a box, carried it downstairs, and without any hesitation set them ablaze. The orange flames flickered. Suddenly, Rosalie heard footsteps behind her. She instinctively looked up and saw Julian Kingsley, tall and imposing in his crisp pilot's uniform. He had clearly just returned from a flight. Seeing her downstairs, he gave a slight smile. Burning something? He bent down and picked up a pink envelope that hadn't completely burned, raising an eyebrow. Love letters? You wrote love letters? Who to? Rosalie stared at him, about to speak, but he laughed, tossed the letter into the fire, and then ruffled her hair. All right, just teasing. Why so serious, sweetie? I don't mind a current girlfriend's past, nor will I pry. Come back inside when you're done burning things. It's cold out here. With that, he didn't linger and stepped into the elevator. After his figure had completely disappeared, Rosalie withdrew her gaze, a somewhat bitter smile playing on her lips. Did he not mind, or did he simply not care at all? His name was written on the envelope. If he had just looked closely, he would have seen it. But in the end, he chose to throw it into the fire. She had been secretly in love with her boyfriend for 10 whole years, and yet he didn't have a clue. At 15, Rosalie Atwood, thanks to her excellent grades, had been exceptionally admitted to a high school in a major city. Back then, she was plain, didn't know how to dress, looked rather dowdy, and had no presence whatsoever. Julian Kingsley was her classmate. At that time, he was like a shining star, from a prominent family, strikingly handsome, someone completely out of her league. The first time she saw him was on the first day of school. She had boarded the bus only to find her transit pass missing. Students queuing behind her grumbled impatiently, saying if she didn't have money, she should walk. They muttered that if she were pretty it might be excusable, but a girl in such an unfashionable skirt blocking the way was an eyesore. Her face flushed with shame. Just as she was about to get off, a pair of slender hands reached out from in front of her and tapped a pass for her. She thanked the person profusely with gratitude, but when she looked up and saw the boy's breathtakingly handsome face, she blushed and stammered, unable to speak properly. Classmate, my name is Rosalie Atwood. Which class are you in? I'll pay you back." His voice was very pleasant, but he simply said, "No need." Later, she learned his name was Julian Kingsley, the campus king of Northwood High, and also a notorious rake whose girlfriends changed every 3 days. From that day on, her gaze would unconsciously linger on Julian Kingsley. She noticed his desk drawer overflowed with love letters, yet she still stayed up late, writing down her own burgeoning affections. She knew he liked beautiful and outstanding girls, so she studied hard, lost weight, learned to apply makeup, and shed her timid, insecure personality. She strived to become better, just to be worthy of him. Finally, she got into the same university as him, and because of her dramatic transformation, Julian Kingsley finally noticed her. In their sophomore year, Julian approached her. He didn't remember her as his high school classmate at all, simply smiling and asking if she wanted to be his girlfriend. She fought back the urge to cry and nodded. Later, she became his 78th girlfriend and also his last. After they got together, Julian wasn't like before, breaking up after 3 days. Instead, he dated her seriously for 6 years. Everyone said he was truly in love this time, that the rake had reformed. Rosalie also believed she had obtained what she had yearned for in her youth. Countless nights, lying beside him, watching his sleeping face, her heart was full of joy. Until 3 days ago, when Julian got drunk. She went to pick him up and accidentally overheard a conversation between him and his friends. A friend had his arm around him. "King, you've been with that girlfriend for 6 years now, still not breaking up?" Julian's voice was hoarse, clearly drunk. "Not yet. She'll think I'm not committed enough." "I tell you, King, you're completely wrapped around Sylvia Monroe's finger. Back then, you confessed to her, she rejected you, and you let yourself become a cad about town, changing girlfriends every 3 days just to forget her. Then she came back looking for you, but thought you weren't the faithful type and told you to be in a stable relationship to show her. Only then would she consider you. So you just found someone and dated her for 6 years. You're really done for." It was noisy inside. No one noticed Rosalie standing outside the door, feeling as if she'd plunged into an ice cave. She had heard the name Sylvia Monroe before. She was from the school next to Northwood High. But she had never imagined that Julian was in love with her. And she'd never thought she was just a means for Julian to prove his love to someone else, a placeholder girlfriend. Her youth, her 10 years, shattered. So the wind had blushed the young girl's cheeks, but it couldn't move the young man's heart. So the person who had captivated her youth had never, from beginning to end, turned back to look at her. She had figured it out and finally decided to pull away. So she agreed to the blind dates her family arranged. "Julian Kingsley, today is the 10th year I've loved you. It is also the first day I've decided to stop loving you." Chapter 2, after Rosalie Atwood burned everything, she didn't go home immediately but sat on a bench outside for a very long time. When she pushed open the door, Julian Kingsley was already asleep, but his phone on the nightstand was vibrating nonstop. She walked over to turn it off but accidentally opened his WhatsApp. Upon opening it, the screen was filled with chat logs between him and Sylvia Monroe. "Jules, what a coincidence, I never thought I'd be on your flight on my trip back. I can't believe a playboy like you could become such a calm and collected airline captain." Julian had remained silent for a long time before replying. "Do you really not know why I became an airline captain?" Sylvia sent a smiling emoji. "Don't tell me it's because of me, just because I said I liked guys in captain uniforms." Julian replied with only one word, but it was enough to crush everything Rosalie had. "Yes," her eyes suddenly reddened, tears flowing uncontrollably. She quickly wiped them away. As she exited the chat interface, she saw the prominent pinned chat icon, and below it her own chat box, which also had an icon. But it was muted. Love and no love, a world of difference in a single word. It truly was a chasm. But it didn't matter. She had already pulled away. He had waited for the person he loved, and she was about to start a new life. To each their own, a win-win in its own way. The next day, when the alarm Rosalie had set woke her up, she realized Julian Kingsley had already left. He hadn't said where he was going, but she knew he was out looking for Sylvia Monroe. After all, last night, Sylvia had casually mentioned wanting to eat at that dim sum place near their old school, and he had immediately booked a table on a reservation app. Rosalie didn't dwell on it. She had her own things to do. After breakfast, she put on some makeup, grabbed her bag, and went to her company to complete her resignation procedures. At noon, she met up with a few of her university roommates for a farewell lunch. The girls all knew about her 10-year unrequited love story. Hearing that she planned to break up and go back to her hometown for blind dates, they all sighed, feeling she had wasted the best 10 years of her life. "Rosalie, are you just going to leave quietly like this? Don't you feel wronged? Aren't you going to tell Julian Kingsley about everything you silently did for him during all those years you loved him before you go? Yeah, you liked him so much. Are you really not going to fight for it one more time? If you tell him, maybe he'll ask you to stay. 10 years, even a heart of stone would be moved. Although Julian acted like a total jerk in this, you're the one who was genuinely with him for 6 years. That girl went abroad long ago, right? Maybe he just has some kind of youthful obsession with her." Rosalie knew they were feeling sorry for her, but her mind was made up. She didn't want to do these pointless things anymore and gently shook her head. "He doesn't like me. Saying anything is meaningless. It's better to make a clean break and leave with dignity." Seeing her decisive attitude, everyone felt it wasn't right to persuade her further. They could only sigh and wish her well in finding someone new. They chatted for over an hour before finally parting ways. After finishing her last glass of wine, Rosalie returned home, still feeling quite energetic. She took advantage of the good weather to clear out all the things she had bought over the years. Matching couples' clothes and mugs, a closet full of stuffed animals won over the years, the razor in the bathroom, the dressing table piled high with cosmetics, item by item, all carefully chosen and bought by her, now all headed for the trash. The once cozy bedroom, kitchen, and living room were now empty and desolate. But Rosalie knew that after she left, these empty spaces would soon be filled with new items. They would all have a common, new mistress, Sylvia Monroe. For the next 3 or 4 days, Julian Kingsley didn't come home, nor did he send a single message. Rosalie didn't care where he went, slowly packing her luggage. Friday was her birthday. She went out and ordered a cake and also bought herself a bouquet of fresh flowers. She had just put the flowers in a vase when she received a call from Julian. "Rosalie, I'm downstairs at your company. Your colleagues said you resigned." "What happened?" Hearing this, a hint of surprise flashed across Rosalie's face. In all the time they'd been together, Julian had never picked her up from work. Although she didn't know why he had this sudden whim, she couldn't tell him the real reason for her resignation and made an excuse. "I've been too tired lately, wanted to rest at home for a while." Julian didn't press further, just asked for her address, saying he would pick her up and take her somewhere. Half an hour later, they met at her apartment. Rosalie got in the car. She didn't ask him where they were going, nor did she ask him why he hadn't been back these past few days. She just quietly watched the scenery outside the window, silent all the way. Chapter 3. When the car stopped, Julian Kingsley didn't wait for her and went in first. Rosalie Atwood followed him in and realized it was a birthday party. But the guest of honor wasn't her. It was someone else. Seeing Sylvia Monroe standing at the center of the stage, the center of attention, Rosalie instantly understood that Sylvia was the star of this banquet. Sylvia wore a gorgeous haute couture gown, a custom diamond necklace accentuating her long neck, and pearl earrings that sparkled and shimmered like mermaids' tears, so beautiful it was hard to look away. Rosalie stared at the jewelry for a long time. She knew these pieces by heart. For no other reason than because these items, before being used, had always been displayed in Julian's showcase. Before she knew the truth, she had thought these were all gifts he had prepared for her and had looked forward to them for a long time. But so much time had passed, year after year, he would prepare them every year but never took them out. Gradually, she had forgotten about them. It wasn't until she saw them again today that she realized they were all for Sylvia Monroe. Perhaps noticing her gaze, Sylvia lifted her skirt and came over, a gentle smile on her lips. "Jules, is this the girlfriend you've been dating for 6 years and promised to bring for me to see? She's really pretty. No wonder she could steal our campus king's heart." So, it was Sylvia who wanted to meet her. No wonder Julian had uncharacteristically brought her here. Rosalie finally understood his intentions and smiled self-deprecatingly. A few of Julian's entourage came over, indignantly chiming in from the side. "Yeah, dated for 6 years. King is really obedient and faithful. We also hope certain people can keep their promises and not pull any more strange tests. There aren't many truly sincere people these days. If you find one, cherish them. If you really betray them, it'll be too late for regrets." The lads were unabashedly sticking up for Julian, assuming Rosalie couldn't understand. She, as they expected, showed no emotion and casually found a seat, quietly playing the role of the clueless, decorative girlfriend who couldn't decipher their charades. Throughout the evening, Rosalie didn't leave her seat, quietly watching Julian, who trailed after Sylvia. He had always disliked socializing, yet he would accompany Sylvia to chat with the young masters of their circle. He, who usually showed no interest in anything, remembered Sylvia's dislikes and preferences, even taking drinks for her. His girlfriend was right there, yet he sulked because Sylvia shook hands with another man. In just a few short hours, Rosalie saw the unconscious care Julian showed when he liked someone. After 6 years together, she finally saw clearly what he was like when he was in love. After the birthday song at the center of the stage, everyone flocked to present birthday gifts. Julian was the grand finale. He took out the deed to a manor, his eyes full of warmth. "Sylvie, you once said you wanted a warm home, so I'm giving you a manor. I hope your wish comes true." Hearing this, several of his buddies around them started to whoop and cheer him on. "You guys don't know, all the rooms in this manor were designed by King himself. It took a whole 6 years to renovate. I heard the back garden is full of lavender and tulips. I wonder whose favorite flowers those are. A warm home, huh? In my opinion, you need a male host to make it truly warm, don't you guys think so? Sylvia's face gradually turned crimson amidst all the teasing. She quickly clasped her hands, pretending to make a wish, and everyone finally quieted down. In the silence, Rosalie's phone dinged a few times. It was a voice message from her dad. She was about to long press to convert it to text, but accidentally hit play. Rosalie, happy birthday. It's almost midnight, have you had any cake yet? The gazes that had been focused on Sylvia instantly shifted to Rosalie, all filled with shock. Julian also froze for a few seconds, then turned to look at her, his brow slightly furrowed. Rosalie, is your birthday today? Rosalie's face was expressionless as she nodded lightly. In the past, Julian would at least ask about the date in advance and prepare a gift. But this year, it coincided with Sylvia's birthday, so it seemed normal that he had completely forgotten. No one had expected such a coincidence, and they all looked at each other in dismay. In the end, it was Sylvia who smoothed things over. She pulled Rosalie to the cake and personally lit a candle. Since it's such a coincidence, let's celebrate together. You make a wish too. Rosalie didn't refuse and closed her eyes. After she made her wish, to break the awkward atmosphere, Julian casually asked, "What did you wish for? Is there any gift you want?" Rosalie glanced at him and said calmly, "I hope to get married smoothly within this year." Chapter 4. As soon as those words were out, the entire hall fell silent. Only Sylvia Monroe laughed. She turned to Julian Kingsley, her words drawn out and thought-provoking. "Jules, it seems your girlfriend is really looking forward to you fulfilling her wish within the year. You'd better hurry. If it happens, remember to invite me to the wedding feast." Julian's stunned face slowly turned ashen at her words. Rosalie Atwood knew he was angry and was about to explain when he interrupted her. "Sylvia Monroe, do you find this amusing? Are you determined to play me for a fool until you're satisfied? You clearly know." These angry accusations were not directed at Rosalie. They were aimed at Sylvia, who had just been teasing. Looking at his resentful, hesitant expression, everyone knew what he was angry about. He was angry at Sylvia's feigned ignorance, at her attitude of once again trampling his feelings underfoot. The atmosphere in the room was now truly icy. Julian violently kicked over a nearby chair, grabbed his car keys, and slammed the door as he left. A perfectly good birthday party ended on such a sour note. Seeing people around starting to say, let's go," Rosalie lowered her eyes, picked up her bag, and went to the restroom. When she came out again, the guests had all left. A heated argument could be heard from the corridor. "Sylvia Monroe, you went too far today. Do you know how long King prepared for this birthday? Why did you have to ruin his efforts and say such things in public to make him angry?" "Wasn't I telling the truth? His girlfriend said she wants to get married. If not with him, then who else? Damn it, what's the point of you saying all this? King has always liked you back then. Your one rejection wounded him so deeply he became a cad about town. Later, you beckoned, and he came running back, only for you to complain he wasn't faithful enough. So he listened to you and got this placeholder girlfriend. What more do you want? His sincere feelings aren't for you to trample on like this. Nothing much. I just hadn't seen him so devoted and wanted to see how far he'd go for me. He did it willingly. Why are you worrying for him?" It was Sylvia, arguing with Julian's childhood pal. Rosalie had no intention of prying into their privacy, but she couldn't help but wonder what Julian's expression would be if he heard this. Would he be heartbroken? Would he be as heartbroken as she was when she learned the truth, as if she had died? Between her and Julian, he was the one in control. As long as he showed a little care, her emotions would fluctuate, and between Julian and Sylvia, he became the subordinate one, at her beck and call. A casual, dismissive word from Sylvia, and he would fall apart. Yes, those who betray true feelings suffer immensely. She turned and went down the stairs on the other side. After returning home, Rosalie picked up the cake she had left by the door and gave herself a belated birthday celebration. She only ate half of the 6-inch cake before going to rest. The next day at noon, she was awakened by a knock on the door. Rubbing her eyes, she got up to open it. It was Julian. Having not seen him for a night, he seemed to still be angry, his expression not a pleasant one. But when his eyes met hers, he immediately forced a somewhat strained smile and took out a diamond bracelet from his pocket. Happy birthday. This is your birthday gift. I drank too much yesterday and forgot to give it to you. Rosalie only needed one glance to recognize that this bracelet was a set with the necklace Sylvia had worn last night. Sylvia didn't like it, so he was regifting it to her, conveniently saving himself the trouble of picking out a gift. That was a reasonable interpretation, right? Seeing her silence, Julian thought she didn't like it and quickly added, "You don't like it. Then buy whatever you want yourself. Use my card." Rosalie shook her head, reached out to take it, and casually placed it on the console table by the entrance. "I like it. No trouble at all." Chapter 5. Julian Kingsley didn't ask further. He casually tossed his jacket on the sofa, his gaze catching the cake on the table, and his eyes froze again. After a moment's hesitation, he couldn't help but speak. "Yesterday, that birthday wish you made, was it?" Seeing the probing look in his eyes, Rosalie Atwood answered him in a joking tone. "Seeing that everyone didn't know it was my birthday, it was a bit awkward, so I made a joke. I didn't expect everyone not to get it. Sorry." Hearing this, Julian finally breathed a sigh of relief. "Then what was your real wish?" "I wished for my parents to be healthy and for all their wishes to come true." It was a very simple and also very sincere wish. Julian's heart stirred. He raised his hand and gently tapped her nose, smiling slightly. "You're so filial. Your wish will definitely come true." Rosalie thought so too. She would definitely be able to successfully go on blind dates, get married, stay by her parents' side, and take care of them until they grew old. For the next few days, Julian stayed at home, rarely going out. During this time, he also noticed many things missing from the house and asked a few times, "Rosalie, where did those matching couple mugs you bought go? They broke a few days ago. And that tie you gave me? I'm not sure. It probably got blown away by the wind when it was drying." They were all trivial little things, and Julian didn't pay them much mind. After Rosalie fobbed him off with excuses each time, she made a long list, planning to eat at all the famous restaurants and try all the local snacks before leaving the city. For years, to maintain her figure, she had been on a strict diet, eating light and mostly vegetarian. It had been a long time since she had indulged herself freely, and the beauty she had painstakingly maintained hadn't brought her the love she desired. Julian didn't like her, regardless of whether she was beautiful or plain, fat or thin, wearing makeup or not. The beautiful appearance she had sacrificed her health for was worthless in Sylvia Monroe's presence and in Julian's eyes. Those few slices of birthday cake had awakened Rosalie's long-suppressed appetite and also made her realize that love wasn't the only thing that could make her happy. Good food, fresh flowers, the care of friends, the thoughts of her family, these were all actually very important parts of life. She shouldn't have neglected them for one thing. Rosalie started going out more often. Julian noticed and stopped her. "Going out again? Where are you planning to go?" "West side of the city for dinner." "Meeting someone? Want me to drive you?" Julian asked casually, looking at the continuous heavy rain outside. Rosalie shook her head, bending down to change her shoes. "Alone. Want to try some Japanese food? No need to trouble you, I can just get a cab." Hearing this, Julian looked at her in surprise. He remembered that to maintain her weight, she ate very little for all 3 meals. Why had she suddenly developed such a craving recently? But it was good for her to eat more. She was too thin. He was a little worried the wind outside might blow her away. Thinking of this, he remembered he had nothing much to do in the afternoon, got up, grabbed his jacket, and walked over to her. Together. "It's raining outside. I'll drive you." Rosalie hadn't expected him to want to go and froze for a moment. The rain was getting heavier, and there were hardly any cars on the road. The ground was slippery. Julian gripped the steering wheel with both hands and asked Rosalie to take out his phone and plug it in to charge. She did, as he said. The moment she plugged in the charger, the screen lit up, flashing an unread message. "King, coming to the bar party? Sylvie's here too." Rosalie glanced at it, intending to pretend she hadn't seen it, when she heard Julian ask her to reply to the message for him. "Decline it. Just say you and I are going for Japanese food and don't have time." She turned her head and caught a fleeting, complex expression on his face. Displeasure mixed with some unwillingness, probing hidden with some expectation. Rosalie understood. She had just finished typing and sent the message when the phone rang. It was Sylvia. Julian's lips curled up instinctively when he saw who it was, but he delayed answering. After more than 10 seconds, he pretended he had just heard the ringing, pulled over to the side of the road, and took the phone. "I already said? Jules, just now a group of guys asked for my number and were getting handsy. I got angry and smashed a bottle on them. Now they've cornered me at the club. You have to come save me." Chapter 6. The moment he heard that panicked, choked voice, Julian Kingsley's face turned incredibly grim. He slammed on the accelerator, yanked the steering wheel, and made a 180-degree turn. Caught off guard, Rosalie Atwood slammed into the car door, her forehead gashed by a dislodged ornament, a 5-centimeter wound. Blood dripped down. She clutched the wound in pain, looking at Julian with utter confusion. He didn't even notice she was injured, entirely focused on the person on the other end of the phone. His eyes were practically spitting fire, yet he suppressed it, forcing a calm and reassuring tone. "Don't be afraid. Where are you now? Don't hang up, I'll be there within 5 minutes." The questions Rosalie was about to blurt out died in her throat at his words. She took some tissues from her bag and tended to her still bleeding wound. The GPS kept warning about speeding, but Julian ignored it, running 7 or 8 red lights. Watching the speedometer nearly max out, Rosalie adjusted her seatbelt. 5 minutes later, the car screeched to a halt in front of the bar. Julian seemed to have forgotten there was someone else in the car, unbuckled his seatbelt, and sprinted off. Watching his rapidly disappearing figure, Rosalie hesitated for a few seconds, then followed. As soon as she entered, she saw the tables in the lobby smashed to pieces and realized something was wrong. Noisy shouts came from a private room on the second floor. When she went up, she saw 2 groups of people shoving each other. Near the door of the private room were Julian, who had just arrived, and 4 or 5 of his entourage. Rosalie also recognized the people on the other side. Nicholas Lynch, Julian's well-known arch-rival in their circle. Julian was handsome, had a good personality, and had been outstanding since childhood. Although his love life was a bit wild, which young master from a wealthy family didn't indulge. So it didn't stop him from being the envy of all prominent families in their circle, the child of someone else's family. Nicholas Lynch, however, was his opposite in every way, a party animal, a row, a real cancer in their circle. Because he hated Julian's excellence, he opposed Julian in everything. Yet Julian never paid him any mind, which further intensified Nicholas's hatred. Today, Julian's white moonlight had smashed him, finally giving him an opportunity. He had brought a dozen of his cronies and surrounded the private room, his bandaged right hand still dripping blood, his eyes dark and ominous. "Julian Kingsley, the security footage is crystal clear, your little darling started it. What, are you going to twist the facts and protect her?" Julian sneered, pulling Sylvia Monroe into his arms. "What compensation do you want? Just name your price." Seeing how much Julian cared, Nicholas Lynch showed a contemptuous smile, his eyes full of provocation. "Compensation? She smashed my hand so bad it's almost broken. Of course, we're going to the police station, we'll sue if we have to sue, and she'll go to jail if she has to go to jail." Hearing this, the faces of Julian and his entourage changed. Veins bulged on Julian's forehead, but he could only suppress his anger, forcing out a few words through gritted teeth. "Is it necessary to make such a big deal out of this? What's the point of bullying a girl? If you want to cause trouble, come at me." This was exactly what Nicholas Lynch was waiting for. His eyes darted around, and he had one of his underlings bring the fruit knife from the table, his tone extremely venomous. "All right, then I won't make it difficult for you. She ruined my hand, you leave one of yours, and we'll call it even." As soon as his voice fell, the sharp fruit knife was embedded in the door. Hearing this, Julian's entourage quickly shielded him, looking at Nicholas with fury. Lynch were all in the same circle, don't go too far. Despite their words, no one knew better than Julian how serious today's matter was. Nicholas had injured his hand today. Even if Julian could temporarily resolve the incident, Nicholas hated him so much that he would definitely find ways to retaliate in the future. If Nicholas couldn't retaliate against him, he would retaliate against his weakness. Sylvia Monroe was his weakness. Although he could protect Sylvia, the world was a big place, and there would always be places he couldn't watch over. He didn't want Sylvia to be in danger in the future. The best way was to end everything today. After clearly thinking through the stakes, Julian no longer hesitated and pushed aside the people around him. His entourage were all shocked, rushing forward to grab his hand, telling him not to be foolish. "Julian Kingsley, are you damn crazy you're a pilot if you cripple your hand? Your career is over. Is a woman worth it?" But he showed an unprecedented look in his eyes, coldly looking at Nicholas. "You'll keep your word." Of course, after receiving an affirmative answer, Julian pulled out the knife embedded in the door. Watching his actions, Rosalie's heart leaped to her throat. Before she could stop him, Julian pulled Sylvia, who was already scared and crying to the point of fainting, into his arms, shielding her view with his clothes and comforting her softly. "Don't be afraid, it'll be over soon." Then, under countless shocked gazes, Julian raised the dagger and decisively plunged it into the palm of his right hand. A torrent of blood spurted out, splashing everywhere, a horrifying sight. His face instantly turned whiter than paper, but he clenched his jaw tightly, only letting out a muffled groan, terrified of scaring the person in his arms. From beginning to end, he hadn't once looked at his legitimate girlfriend, Rosalie Atwood, who stood not far away, her face deathly pale. Chapter 7. Julian Kingsley was quickly rushed into the operating room. His family, the Kingsleys, arrived swiftly upon hearing the news. After learning the details from his entourage, Eleanor Kingsley was so furious she smashed the Buddhist prayer beads on her wrist. "He's been driven mad by a woman for 10 years, and now he's crippled his own right hand. I think he's possessed." The buddies quickly stepped forward to console the elderly couple, saying everything they could, both good and bad, to barely calm them down. A few hours later, the light in the operating room went out. The doctor came out, pushing Julian on a gurney, his voice full of relief. He was brought in just in time, and the surgery was successful. He'll be fine after a few months of recuperation. Hearing this, everyone present breathed a sigh of relief. Knowing there would be no lasting impact, Richard and Eleanor Kingsley didn't want to see their rebellious son and decided to fly abroad for a conference that very night. Before leaving, the elderly couple thanked each of the people who had stayed by Julian's side, inviting them to visit their home next time. But when they walked up to Rosalie Atwood, they acted as if they hadn't seen her, passing her by directly to thank the medical staff nearby. Watching their departing figures, Rosalie instantly understood everything. So Julian had never told his family that he had a girlfriend of 6 years. Well, it made sense. Why bother introducing someone he was bound to break up with when the time came? During Julian's hospital stay, Rosalie Atwood stayed by his bedside, busy taking care of him, sleeping only 4 or 5 hours a day. Seeing her increasingly haggard face, Julian Kingsley showed a pained expression. "I'm fine now. You go get some rest." Saying this, he forcefully pulled her to sit down and poured her a glass of water. He didn't explain what happened that day, seemingly feeling at a loss for how to explain it. After a pause, he casually asked a few questions. "Which friends have visited the hospital these past few days? I slept for too long. Did I miss anyone? Did Sylvia Monroe come?" Rosalie's hand, holding the glass, paused. She looked at him steadily. She knew that in his entire sentence, only the last few words truly mattered to him, so her answer was concise. "Everyone came. Sylvia Monroe was probably traumatized by the scare, so she didn't come." Hearing this, Julian's brow furrowed tightly. He lost interest in small talk and picked up his phone, laboriously typing on the screen. Listening to the continuous WhatsApp notification sounds, Rosalie knew he was concerned about Sylvia again. She silently got up to handle the discharge procedures. The car had just arrived at their apartment building, and they hadn't even gone upstairs when Julian received a call from Sylvia, turned around, and left. Looking at the bandage wrapped around his hand, then at his hurried footsteps, the words of persuasion Rosalie wanted to say stuck in her throat. She withdrew her gaze and turned back to the apartment. For the next 3 days, Julian didn't return. As the day of her departure drew nearer, Rosalie's mood became calmer. After going back, she planned to rest while looking for a job, so she had been looking at job postings in her hometown. The day before she left, her high school classmates said they were having a reunion. Since she had nothing else to do, she went to join in the fun. After so many years, these old classmates had changed a lot, and they spent a long time sighing and reminiscing when they met again. When Rosalie walked in, everyone couldn't believe that the stunning beauty before them was the mousy, bookish girl from 10 years ago who only knew how to study, but was hopelessly unfashionable. Faced with everyone's shock, she appeared quite calm and composed. After exchanging a few pleasantries, she sat down with a few of her old good friends. Once most people had gathered, Chris, the class president, was just about to get up and propose a toast. The door suddenly pushed open. Chapter 8, Julian Kingsley walked in smiling and greeted everyone. When his eyes fell on Rosalie Atwood, he froze on the spot. "Rosalie, why are you here?" Everyone else looked as if they'd been struck by lightning. "Of course she's here. We were all high school classmates in the same class." "No way, Julian, our campus king, you're that forgetful." "High school classmates? In the same class." Those few words exploded like a bomb in Julian's ears. He looked at Rosalie in shock, his lips slightly parted, his expression shifting rapidly. It was unclear whether he felt guilty for not remembering or confused as to why Rosalie hadn't told him. A few girls in the class sensed something was amiss and looked at the two of them with gossipy curiosity. "Rosalie, calling her so intimately, eh, Julian? What's the relationship between you two?" Before Rosalie could say, "Just classmates," Julian acknowledged it. "Rosalie is my girlfriend. We've been together for 6 years." At these words, the whole place erupted. Everyone started digging into their love story. Julian hadn't expected her to be his classmate, and Rosalie hadn't expected him to openly acknowledge their relationship. Both of them, surrounded by a crowd bombarding them with questions, felt a bit overwhelmed. Julian kept drinking to change the subject, while Rosalie found an opportunity to go to the restroom. After 3 glasses of wine, Chris, the class president, who was a lightweight, grabbed Julian's hand and babbled incessantly. "I'm so happy to see you two together. Rosalie has finally got her wish. You didn't know she's liked you for a long time, did you? Once during gym class, you were asleep in the classroom. I went back to get something and saw her shielding the light for you. That's how I found out. Back then, the number of girls who liked you was countless, but Rosalie made the deepest impression on me. When you sprained your ankle playing basketball, she did all your cleaning duties for you. When you got into a fight with some thugs and were cornered in an alley, she skipped class to get help and saved you. When a group of people from outside school were gossiping about you, she, as timid as she was, rushed out to defend you, arguing until she was red in the face. Ah, young love is so pure. Seeing you two soulmates finally together, I'm genuinely happy for you. She's a good girl. You must cherish her, or you'll definitely regret it." Hearing these things for the first time, Julian felt his body suddenly stiffen. He had always thought they were just university acquaintances who met by chance. He never expected Rosalie to be his high school classmate, let alone that she had secretly loved him for 10 whole years. Remembering how he had impulsively gotten together with her for 6 years because of a promise, and how she was still in the dark, a strange emotion suddenly welled up in his heart, sour and astringent, making him panic. He no longer had the courage to meet her gaze and could only drink glass after glass of wine in silence. After the reunion ended, Rosalie helped a drunk Julian home. She brought a hot towel, wanting to wipe his face, but he held onto her hand tightly and wouldn't let go, his face full of heartache. "Are you silly? Why didn't you tell me?" Rosalie knew he must have heard something at the reunion, but she no longer cared. She pulled her hand away and said softly, "Liking you was my own business. It had nothing to do with you." Julian, still retaining a sliver of sobriety, heard this, and an indescribable, uneasy emotion churned within him. He desperately wanted to say something to her, but didn't know where to start. In the end, all he could do was fall silent. The room quieted down. He raised his hand to shield his eyes from the glaring light, revealing the tattoo on his side. It was 3 English letters. XMY. Every night when their passion peaked, she would lie in his arms, see this tattoo, and always ask Julian what it meant. He would pause, his gaze following hers downward, his eyes filled with cherish and longing. A faith more important than my life." At that time, Rosalie didn't know these 3 letters stood for Sylvia Monroe. She naively believed his words. She regarded his dream as her dream, his faith as her faith, and so she too got an identical tattoo. Looking back on these past events now, Rosalie no longer felt pain, only a sense of amusement. In the recklessness of youth, who hadn't hoped to connect deeply with their beloved and grow old together. Only after hitting a wall and turning back, after crossing the hills and looking back, did one realize that some fates were destined for separation from the moment they met. She and Julian had reached a fork in the road. It was time to say goodbye. Chapter 9. The day after a night of heavy drinking, one's head always felt groggy. Julian Kingsley struggled to get up and wash his face. Smelling the aroma coming from the living room, he went over and found Rosalie Atwood had cooked a large spread of dishes. He glanced at the calendar and saw it was just an ordinary day, which made him curious. "Why did you suddenly cook so much good food?" "To celebrate," Rosalie answered him softly as she arranged the bowls and chopsticks. "Celebrate? Celebrate that his injury was almost healed." Julian could only think of this one thing worth celebrating. But looking at the table full of spicy and flavorful dishes, he remembered the doctor's advice for a light diet and felt something wasn't quite right. However, he didn't dwell on it. He pulled out a chair and had just sat down when his phone suddenly rang. It was Sylvia Monroe. After hesitating for a few seconds, he put down the chopsticks he had just picked up and answered the call. A few minutes later, the call ended. He slowly stood up and glanced subconsciously at Rosalie. She was already seated, peeling a shrimp, seemingly unconcerned whether he ate this meal or not. But thinking that she was celebrating for him, Julian felt guilty and made an excuse. "Rosalie, I have something to do and need to go out for a bit. You eat first. I'll take you out to celebrate later when I get back." "No need. You go ahead and get busy." Rosalie shook her head, her gaze towards him as calm as stagnant water. For some reason, the moment his eyes met hers, his heart inexplicably began to race, as if warning him that something was about to happen. But what it was, he couldn't quite grasp. Across the table, the two of them looked at each other for a long time. In the end, Julian turned and left. The moment the door closed, Rosalie looked at the empty seat opposite her and gave a nonchalant smile. What she wanted to celebrate was congratulating herself on regaining her freedom and learning to love herself. No other person needed to be involved. After finishing her meal, Rosalie cleaned up the kitchen scraps and took the last few things downstairs to throw away. Then she took out the suitcase from the closet and left the apartment. Downstairs, she hailed a cab and went to the tattoo parlor she had visited before. The owner still remembered her and asked what she wanted to get tattooed this time. She looked at the familiar little shop, her voice very soft, yet with a hint of inexplicable determination. "No more tattoos. I want to remove the last one." Looking at her expression, the owner seemed to understand something. A look of regret appeared on his face, and he still tried to persuade her a little. "Tattoo removal will be very painful, miss. Why don't you reconsider?" Painful. Rosalie had already experienced the most desperate, most unbearable pain in the world. How could she be afraid of this little bit of physical suffering? She knew this mark, which carried her past, would fester, hurt, and scar when it was removed. But that was the necessary path for a wound to heal. She didn't explain further, sat in the seat she had sat in before, and lifted the clothes on her side. A dense, fiery pain shot through Rosalie's mind. She couldn't control the physiological tears that streamed down her face. Tears mixed with sweat and trickled down her smiling face. It felt like a century, or perhaps only a few seconds, before the owner finished and handed her a tissue. Rosalie took it, wiped the tear stains from her face, bowed in thanks, and walked out of the small shop with her suitcase. She hailed a cab, took out her phone, sent Julian a breakup message, and then deleted all contact methods related to him. After doing all this, the cab happened to stop at her destination. The scorching afternoon sun fell on Rosalie Atwood. She took out the high-speed rail ticket from her pocket and turned back to take one last look at the city. Then, without any hesitation, she walked into the station and never looked back. Chapter 10. From the moment he stepped out, Julian Kingsley had been on edge. All day, though physically present in the noisy villa, his mind had drifted elsewhere. A few of his buddies, noticing his off-color mood, approached him with several bottles of beer, thrusting them into his left hand. "King, this party is specially for your recovery. How come you, the guest of honor, seem so uninterested? Is it that you only have eyes for Sylvia Monroe's surprise and don't care about our concern?" Seeing their winks and nudges, Julian remembered the phone call and realized 3 hours had already passed. He fumbled in his pocket for his phone, intending to contact Rosalie Atwood, only to find it had died at some point. The battery was drained. Pressing the power button was useless. He had no choice but to toss the phone to someone nearby to charge. He waited patiently for another 10 minutes, but he couldn't hold back any longer and went to the balcony for some air. The third floor offered an excellent view. clearly overlooking the surroundings for several miles. With his exceptional eyesight, Julian could clearly see a sports car approaching from a distance. Amidst the green hills, clear waters, and white buildings, there was only that single speck of red, rapidly approaching. While watching the car draw nearer, he unwrapped the gauze from his hand. Looking at the already scabbed black wound, he gently scratched its edge. This ineffectual gesture did little good. Instead, the itch gradually spread. Julian grew increasingly agitated, tugging at the gauze, wanting to rewrap it, when his peripheral vision caught the car stopping downstairs. He paused his actions and looked down. A man in his early 20s got out of the driver's seat and jogged to the passenger side to open the door. A few seconds later, Sylvia Monroe, in a daffodil yellow dress, appeared in Julian's line of sight. The moment he saw her, a flash of surprise crossed his eyes. He was about to call out to her when the next scene stunned him. Sylvia proactively put her arms around the man's shoulders and offered him a kiss. Julian felt all the blood in his body rush straight to his head, completely washing away what little rationality he had left. He fiercely clenched his fists, turned, kicked open the balcony door, and vaulted over the railing, scrambling down. His buddies, who were in the midst of revelry, were startled and, in a flurry, asked him what was wrong. He didn't explain, pushed aside anyone blocking his way, and rushed out of the villa. The group of tipsy friends, seeing his grim expression, each grabbed a bottle of wine and followed him. When Julian and his entourage reached the entrance, the two, completely unaware, were still passionately kissing. Without thinking, he grabbed the man, raised his still unhealed right hand, and punched him square in the face. Faced with this unprovoked attack, the man didn't back down, grabbing Julian's collar and wrestling with him. Blood gushing from the reopened wound quickly stained both their clothes red. Yet Julian seemed oblivious to the pain, determined to fight his opponent to the death. The man was no pushover either. Seeing Julian's injured hand, he directly attacked his most vulnerable spot. The buddies who had followed, upon seeing this scene, sobered up instantly, rolled up their sleeves, and joined the fray. Against 10, the man was no match and was soon overpowered and beat. Sylvia, standing by, saw them laying into him viciously. Her face turned pale. She grabbed the bouquet of roses from the back seat and smashed it over the head of Julian, who was hitting the hardest. Sharp thorns scraped along his temple down to his chin, drawing several 20-centimeter bloody lines. Droplets of blood oozed out, making his skin appear paper white, his eyes so red they looked like they might burst. That face, full of vicious resentment, turned to look at her. Slowly, it became numb and cold. Chapter 11, after the crowd dispersed, Sylvia Monroe dropped the ruined flower stems and cradled the bruised and swollen man in her arms, her face full of heartache. "Jason, how are you? Say something, don't scare me." The group of people surrounding them saw her action, and their expressions changed, instinctively looking towards Julian Kingsley. He clenched his still bleeding hand tightly, gritting his teeth as he watched the scene, an overwhelmingly oppressive atmosphere enveloping him. Sean Young couldn't take it anymore and started cursing on the spot. "Sylvia Monroe, are you a damn hussy, or what king is at your beck and call, completely devoted to you? It's bad enough you string him along, but now you're messing around with another man. What do you take king for?" The man in her arms coughed a few times and weakly said he was fine. Sylvia finally let out a slight sigh of relief. She swallowed the choked sobs in her throat and looked up at Sean, her eyes filled with a disgust and resentment they had never seen before. "I string him along? Hasn't he been pestering me like a leech for 10 years? Like a mangy dog I can't shake off. I've rejected him so many times. Can't you guys see I don't like him at all? Who I want to be with is my freedom. What right do you have to meddle so much?" Her words directly infuriated several of Julian's entourage. If they hadn't known Julian liked her, they probably would have laid hands on her right then and there. Don't like him? If you don't like him, why did you accept all those expensive gifts? If you don't like him, why did you make him do so much for you? If you don't like him, why did you make that bullshit promise? "Sylvia Monroe, you're an utterly rotten schemer." Being yelled at like this, Sylvia showed no reaction, but the man who had been beaten unconscious became angry first, struggling to get up. Sylvia quickly stopped him and gently helped him into the car. Only then did she turn to face this group of people she had known for 10 years, a cold smile of mutual destruction on her face. "So, what if I play Julian Kingsley like a dog? Is he any better?" Isn't he just playing with other people's feelings for his own selfish desires? Isn't Rosalie Atwood, who was deceived for 6 years, innocent? Aren't those ex-girlfriends he changed every 3 days innocent? It's 6 of one and half, a dozen of the other. Before you call me a trollop, have you ever thought that compared to this good brother you all recognize, I'm 1,000 times, 10,000 times kinder? You shut up everything he did, wasn't it for you? What right do you have to say that? Sylvia felt as if she had heard the funniest joke in the world and burst out laughing. Blaming me again? What, did I ask him to date over 100 girlfriends? Did I force him to pursue Rosalie Atwood? On one hand, he says he can't live without me, and on the other, he has an endless string of affairs. I just saw through his philandering nature and played along a bit, and he took it seriously. That's not obedience, that's being a fool, isn't it? Julian Kingsley's face gradually darkened with each sentence. He stared intently at Sylvia, feeling that the person before him was so unfamiliar, no longer resembling the laughing, playful person in his memory. In those dark pupils, the hidden pain and despair slowly began to show. He had so many things he wanted to say, questions he wanted to ask, emotions he wanted to unleash. In the end, they all dissipated in her cold laughter. Something he had clung to for 10 years at this moment collapsed like an anthill breached by a collapsing dike. Chapter 12. With his old wound reopened, Julian Kingsley was rushed back into the operating room. His parents, Richard and Alina Kingsley, who had just finished work, hurried over upon hearing the news. When the doctor informed them that his hand was now permanently crippled, they felt as if their world was collapsing. He was their only son. They had hoped he would settle down, establish a career, and take over the reins of the Kingsley Corporation. But over the years, he had refused to gain experience within the group, nor had he engaged in any serious relationships. He kept insisting on becoming an airline pilot, constantly making a fuss over a woman. Now, he had ruined his own right hand, severing the only future that could be considered a decent prospect. Overcome with anger and grief, both parents were rushed to the emergency room for resuscitation. After the surgery, Julian was moved to the intensive care unit. When the anesthesia wore off, he opened his eyes, looked at the blurry haze before him, and subconsciously called out, "Rosalie." 1 second, 10 seconds, a minute passed. No answer. He thought she wasn't in the ward at the moment. It was only when he heard footsteps approaching the door that he called out again, but the voice that answered him was unfamiliar. "Julian Kingsley, the nerves in your right palm are severed. There is no possibility of healing. You will not be able to lift any heavy objects in the future." Those few words made Julian's heart sink to the bottom. He slowly raised his bandaged hand, trying to control it, wanting to bring his fingers together, but he couldn't exert any strength. Seeing him aggravate his injury, the nurse quickly came forward to stop him, painstakingly admonishing him once more. Every word fell clearly on Julian's ears, yet it felt as if it came from outer space, carrying an unreal, illusory quality. He parted his pale, dry lips and asked in a daze, "Can I still fly a plane then?" Fly a plane. In your condition, even using a mobile phone is difficult. You should consider changing careers sooner rather than later. The nurse muttered a few words, then changed his medication. The light in Julian's eyes slowly extinguished, and he gradually closed them. Some temporarily forgotten memories surged into his mind like a tide. He remembered what happened before his hand was crippled. The sports car, the kiss, the brawl, the roses, and those harsh, yet heartfelt truths. Watching those constantly flashing images, a smile spread across his lips, filled with endless self-mockery and boundless desolation. During his days in the intensive care unit, Julian never spoke another word. He just silently watched the gradually burgeoning greenery outside the window, rarely even blinking. Only when someone pushed open the door would he turn his head at the sound to look. Upon realizing it wasn't Rosalie Atwood, he would withdraw his gaze and continue to stare blankly. His buddies had never seen him so listless. They didn't dare to provoke him and could only sit beside him in silence. After he was moved to a regular ward, he looked at the gathered family and friends, but still couldn't find that familiar figure among them. Only then did he frown and ask, "Where's Rosalie?" Chapter 13. Hearing his low, hoarse voice, his buddies first showed expressions of joy, then froze, looking at each other in confusion. Yeah, King had been through such a huge ordeal, and several days had passed. How come they hadn't seen Rosalie Atwood? Given her personality, shouldn't she have rushed to the hospital and stayed by his side day and night? Sean Young scratched his head, his tone uncertain. She probably doesn't know about this yet. Doesn't know? It's better if she doesn't know. Looking at the dripping IV bottle, Julian Kingsley let out a sigh of relief. His buddies, seeing his expression gradually relax, thought he had come to terms with things and gathered around him again, chattering nonstop. King, we found out. That guy Sylvia Monroe was with that day is her new boyfriend, Jason Chancellor, the third son of the Chancellor family from Port Eugene. They knew each other when they were studying abroad, and just confirmed their relationship a couple of days ago. The surprise Sylvia mentioned yesterday was that she planned to bring him to publicly humiliate you, the Chancellors. No wonder he could afford a globally limited edition sports car. Julian pondered, not saying anything. His buddies, with no more reservations, became more and more excited as they spoke. We can't touch Jason Chancellor, but we can go after Sylvia Monroe. She played King for so many years, and now that she's latched onto a new wealthy connection, she ungratefully bites us back. I think she doesn't know her own worth. Right, King, just say the word, and we'll definitely find a way to deal with her. Doesn't she like to hook up with rich guys? Let's expose everything she's done over the years and see who'd still want her. Faced with their various proposed acts of revenge, Julian remained silent. Gradually, everyone seemed to sense something. They stopped smiling and cautiously probed. King, you haven't gone soft on her, have you? She's already shown her true colors. Why bother? Yeah, she just has a pretty face, but her heart is actually very black. Bro, don't be foolish. Choosing her is worse than choosing Rosalie Atwood. What do you mean worse than? I think Rosalie is great. She's been by King's side all these years, never caused any trouble, and even helped clean up a lot of messes. She's also ambitious. She's miles better than Sylvia Monroe. Hearing the name Rosalie Atwood, Julian's ice-cold face finally thawed. He looked around, his voice deep and filled with unprecedented determination. Don't mention her name in front of me anymore, and there's no need to settle any scores with her. Just make a clean break, that's all. But from beginning to end, she never explicitly agreed to be with me. It was just my wishful thinking, my own presumption. At this point, Julian had to admit this fact. The room fell silent. Looking at their reluctant expressions, Julian's eyes flickered and his tone softened. My girlfriend is Rosalie Atwood. She was before, she is now, and in the future, it will only be her. After finishing his IV drip for the day, Julian got up and went to the next ward to see his parents, who were still recuperating. The elderly couple were still angry with him. Seeing him enter, they both averted their gaze. Julian knew he had disappointed his parents' expectations and that his 10 years of wrongdoings had disheartened them. He knelt down on the spot to admit his mistakes. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong all these years. I shouldn't have disregarded the Kingsley family and acted so willfully, causing you so much worry. I understand now. I won't disobey you anymore, and I'll listen to you and return to the corporation to take on the responsibilities I should have shouldered. Hearing this, Eleanor Kingsley's expression softened slightly. Richard Kingsley was still fuming and didn't even look at him, pretending not to have heard. Julian didn't hesitate, kowtowing repeatedly on the cold floor. Thump after thump, the sound echoed in the hospital room. Only when his forehead was scraped and bleeding did Richard Kingsley frown and tell him to stop. All right, get up. It's a blessing from heaven that you've come to your senses. Once your injuries heal, get your ass to the company and report for duty. But Julian didn't obey and get up. He knelt upright on the floor, looking at them with a resolute expression. Can it be postponed for 2 months? I want to get married first. Hearing these 2 words, Richard Kingsley picked up the teacup from the table and threw it at his face, his entire face flushed with anger. Married? Who do you plan to marry? Sylvia Monroe. Julian Kingsley, are you out of your mind? She caused your hand to be crippled, and you still want to marry her. Are you trying to anger your mother and me to death? The teacup grazed Julian's ear and shattered on the floor. Scalding tea splashed on his injured hand, soaking the freshly changed gauze. He had no time to worry about that, looking at his angry parents and explaining, It's not her. It's my girlfriend. We've been together for 6 years. I want to marry her. 6 years, how come they hadn't heard a thing? The elderly couple exchanged a look, both seeing disbelief in each other's eyes. In the end, it was a leaner Kingsley who played the good cop, asking a few questions in a gentle tone. "You've been together for so long, why didn't you bring her home for us to see? Which prominent family is she from?" Julian's expression faltered for a few seconds, then quickly returned to normal. He thought carefully before crafting a more suitable answer. "She's not from a wealthy family. Her background is ordinary. I was afraid you wouldn't approve, so I kept it a secret." These few words made Richard Kingsley flare up again. Just as he was about to erupt, a leaner Kingsley quickly stopped him. "Since you knew we wouldn't approve, why did you bring up marriage?" Chapter 14, Why Indeed? Julian Kingsley hadn't quite figured it out himself. He had just brought it up impulsively. But to convince his traditional parents to agree, he needed a very, very good reason. He lowered his eyes, reminiscing about the little moments he shared with Rosalie Atwood. He thought their first meeting was at a bar outside the university, but in fact, they had crossed paths countless times 4 years prior. He thought she had fallen for him at first sight, captivated by his looks, but her love for him had long taken root and blossomed like a dense tree. He thought they would eventually part ways, but after 6 years of twists and turns, he had grown accustomed to her presence. In the heavy snow, the hand she carefully extended to hold his. At graduation, the warm embrace when she stood on tiptoe to hug him. After they moved in together, the daily good morning and good night greetings, scene after scene, flashed through his mind, finally freezing on her 25th birthday, the moment she made her wish. She said she hoped to get married smoothly within the year. To this day, Julian still didn't know if she was telling the truth or not. If it was true, then let's get married. If the person spending the rest of his life with him was Rosalie, then he was willing, without any complaints or regrets. If it was a lie, then let's make it true. He had already decided on her. He wouldn't want to marry anyone else in this lifetime. So he no longer hesitated and poured out the words from the bottom of his heart to his parents. "Dad, Mom, my girlfriend's name is Rosalie Atwood. She was my high school classmate, but I only truly remembered her name in my sophomore year of college. Before that, I had no idea there was such a classmate around, nor did I know she had been secretly in love with me for many years. And our first meeting, where I approached her, was because I lost a game and was dared to ask her to be my girlfriend. I never thought she would agree, and so, by a twist of fate, we became a couple. After we got together, I found she could always sense my oversights and would gently and thoughtfully fix things for me. At that time, I just thought she was more meticulous. I never imagined it was a habit she developed over long years of unrequited love. I took her kindness for granted, giving nothing in return, even focusing all my attention on someone else, yet she never blamed me. Like her, I have loved someone deeply and unforgettably. It's just that I've let go now, while she's still holding on. Looking at her is like seeing my former self. There won't be another person in the world who can empathize with me like she does, nor will there be another person who makes my heart ache like this. So I want to make up for the happiness I owe her, and I also want to give myself a chance to start over." As he finished speaking, Julian's voice held a sense of relief and a hint of a smile. Richard and Alina Kingsley also fell silent. They were experienced people. They knew that although their son had been willful, this time he was deeply hurt, and they didn't want to rub salt in his wounds. They looked at each other, both seeing heartache and helplessness in each other's eyes, yet not knowing what to say. Julian knew their concerns. He bent down again and kowtowed 3 more times heavily. "Just let me be willful one more time, Dad, Mom. I promise this is the last time." Looking at the long gashes on his face and his bandaged right hand, the elderly couple sighed deeply. Ultimately, they compromised. "Bring her home for us to see." Chapter 15, having achieved a satisfactory result, Julian Kingsley didn't disturb his parents any longer and returned to his ward. He picked up the phone that had been sitting untouched on the table for days and pressed the power button. The 10-odd seconds it took for the phone to boot up felt incredibly long at this moment. Julian was eager to share this news with Rosalie Atwood. His left hand trembled slightly as he typed in the password. The network was still loading. He first opened the dial pad and keyed in her number. Beep, 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 beep. The long, drawn-out ringing tormented him, finally ending with a cold, mechanical female voice. "Hello, the number you have dialed is temporarily unavailable. Please try again later." Unable to connect? Was she in an elevator with no signal? That shouldn't be it. Countless thoughts flashed through Julian's mind. He placed the phone back on the table, opened WhatsApp, and tried to contact her another way. The moment he opened it, a dense mass of red dots dominated his vision. Message after message, all inquiries sent after they learned of his injury, made his head ache. He scrolled down more than a dozen messages without finding Rosalie, so he directly opened his contacts and searched. A few seconds later, her name appeared in the center of the screen. Julian tapped on it, contemplating whether to type or send a voice message, when he saw a few words in the white dialogue box at the bottom. Julian Kingsley, let's break up. The time was March 29th, 3:47 p.m., 5 days ago. Julian's mind, which had just been racing, suddenly crashed. He stared intently at the sentence, then at the date, and finally shifted his gaze to the contact name at the top. Rosalie, along with a muted notification symbol. It was indeed the contact name he had personally set, and it was Rosalie's WhatsApp account. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. If it was Rosalie, how could she break up with him for no reason? Was she angry, or was it a prank? Julian's heart pounded violently, yet he desperately tried to find excuses for her. He opened the keyboard, wanting to send a message asking if it was a dare from a lost game, but his left hand wouldn't obey, constantly mistyping. He could only switch to voice message mode and sent one over. Rosalie, I was injured and in the hospital a few days ago, so I couldn't contact you. Are you angry? After releasing his finger, his phone chimed twice. He thought she had replied instantly again and quickly positioned his phone to see her response, only to see a red exclamation mark and a notification that they were no longer friends. The sound just now was the notification for a failed message delivery. Seeing this small yet glaring red mark, the expression on Julian's face slowly froze. He bent down and frantically typed countless messages on the keyboard, sending them over. Countless message failed notification sounds filled the hospital room. Julian, unwilling to give up, tapped on her profile to view her posts, only to find he didn't have permission. TikTok, Instagram mutuals, Facebook, Venmo friends, all social media channels through which he could contact Rosalie Atwood had been blocked or deleted. Looking at the unsent messages, Julian stood stunned, his mind rapidly flashing back to certain memories. During his days in the hospital, Rosalie hadn't shown the same concern as before about where he had gone, nor had she come to see him. The last time they met was the morning of his accident. She had cooked a table full of food, saying she wanted to celebrate for him, yet she hadn't kept him, the guest of honor, around. After that birthday party, he had stayed home for a few days and noticed many things missing, almost all of which she had bought. Tracing further back, she had quietly resigned from her job, and one night, she had burned many things. Julian's memory of this particular incident was hazy. But his intuition told him that those vague memories were very important. What exactly had she burned? Ashes of paper, letter paper, love letters, the love letters she had written to him. Only at this moment did Julian Kingsley finally realize that Rosalie Atwood might not have been joking. She had seriously and proactively initiated the breakup, and it was premeditated. Chapter 16, Julian Kingsley ignored his doctor's orders and immediately left the hospital to return home. Seeing the once cozy apartment now so empty, the panic that had enveloped his heart slowly spread throughout his body. The living room, bedroom, study, not a single thing related to Rosalie Atwood remained. She had completely and utterly vanished from his life. Julian felt like a ship lost at sea in the dead of night, bewildered and utterly helpless. He mobilized his buddies to contact Rosalie, only to discover she had deleted everyone associated with him, leaving no one behind. She was determined to draw a clear line between them. This resolute attitude threw Julian into a complete panic. He could no longer control his rationality, and dragging his still unhealed hand, scoured Northwood City. The parks they had once visited, the charming alleyways she had praised, the yoga studio she frequented. Nowhere could he find any trace of Rosalie. For a day and a night, Julian didn't rest for a moment. When dawn broke again, he clung to a final sliver of hope and went to her former company. Finally, from her ex-colleagues, he learned her whereabouts. Rosalie seems to have gone back to her hometown, Jiangchang. Without a second thought, Julian booked the next available flight to Jiangcheng. Sean Young, seeing his urgency, tried to persuade him. "King, your injury hasn't healed yet. There's no need to chase after her right now, is there? Since we know where she is, you can go after you've recovered. It'll be the same." Julian knew Sean meant well, but he couldn't wait a single moment longer. No one understood better than he did that when a person's heart completely died and they decided to let go. It was after an accumulation of countless disappointments. He had already wasted 5 days. If he delayed any longer, the chances of reconciliation would be minuscule. So, disregarding everyone's advice, he boarded the plane. After landing in Jiangcheng, his secretary sent him the address they had found. Julian, along with Sean, rushed over directly. They knocked on the door several times, but there was no response. It seemed she wasn't home. The two of them waited at the entrance of the residential complex from noon until dusk, when they finally saw Rosalie Atwood. She got out of a black sedan, and upon looking up and seeing the two of them, she froze for a moment, her brows slightly furrowed. As their eyes met, Julian eagerly stood up, wanting to approach and greet her. But after taking only a few steps, he stopped, because Rosalie had turned sideways and was talking to someone else. It was a man in his mid-20s, wearing a well-tailored trench coat and gold-rimmed glasses, looking very refined and gentlemanly. Because they weren't far apart, Julian could clearly hear their conversation. "Dr. Irving, thank you for your hospitality today. I had a very pleasant day. Perhaps I can treat you to tea next time? It's a date then. I'll wait for Miss Atwood's call. See you then. See you then." After a polite farewell, Rosalie watched Lawrence Irving's car drive out of sight before turning to go home. She looked straight ahead at the osmanthus tree in the distance, her expression faint, unreadable. As she passed Julian, she didn't pause, seemingly having no desire to interact with him at all. Watching her walk past him without even a glance, Julian finally couldn't hold back any longer. He raised his left hand and grabbed her wrist, his voice low, tinged with an indescribable sense of loss. "Rosalie, who is that man who just dropped you off?" Rosalie lowered her eyes to her captured wrist and with a slight effort shook his hand off. A blind date. Chapter 17, Sean Young, standing nearby, heard this and instantly jumped up, his face full of disbelief. "It's only been a few days since you broke up with King, and you're already going on blind dates." Rosalie Atwood took 2 steps back, putting distance between herself and Julian Kingsley. Only then did she glance at Sean, her voice calm. "We've already broken up. Whether I go on blind dates or not seems to have nothing to do with you, does it?" Julian stared blankly at his empty hand, his throat bobbing a few times. He turned to face her, a sorrowful look welling in his eyes. "You want to get married? Shouldn't the person you marry be me?" A very faint smile appeared on Rosalie's face, her tone light and swift. "Sorry, I'm the type who doesn't go back to old flames." That one sentence made Julian's expression change. Sean also hadn't expected to hear such words from her and immediately spoke up for his friend. "King didn't do anything wrong. Why did you break up with him for no reason, and now you're seamlessly moving on to blind dates? Haven't you liked King for many years? Why are you doing something so incomprehensible? For no reason, seamlessly, incomprehensible?" Such selfish and self-centered words. Rosalie had no intention of arguing with them about right and wrong. It was meaningless, so she only answered with one sentence. "I don't like him anymore, so we broke up. Isn't that allowed?" After saying this, she didn't look at their expressions and walked towards the residential complex. Seeing her so heartless, Sean couldn't hold back anymore and shouted across the 3-meter distance. "Rosalie Atwood, do you know King's right hand is crippled? Don't you feel any heartache at all?" Was this an attempt at emotional blackmail, now resorting to a sob story? But Rosalie wasn't falling for it. She didn't turn back, merely raising her voice. "Wasn't that his own choice? It has nothing to do with me, his ex-girlfriend, right?" The spring sunset shone on Rosalie Atwood, warm and gentle. She looked at the tender green shoots, called gamma, inus, on the branches, thought of the gradually healing wound on her side, and a great joy slowly rose in her eyes. The cold winter was over. The spring she had longed for had finally arrived. As soon as she pushed open the door, Rosalie smelled the aroma of braised short ribs. She put down her bag, changed her shoes, and ran into the kitchen. While washing her hands, she peeked into the pot, her mouth watering. "Just got home, time to eat, Mom. I'm going to eat 3 bowls of rice tonight. Robert Atwood, who was serving the dishes, looked at her alone and was somewhat surprised. Didn't I ask you to invite Laurie to eat at home? Where is he? He said he didn't prepare anything today and felt embarrassed to come over and bother us. He'll come next time with a gift. Rosalie wiped the water from her hands, took out bowls and chopsticks from the cabinet, and answered casually. Mary Atwood untied her apron, followed her husband and daughter out, and pulled out a chair. That boy, he's really too polite. You too, if you had said so earlier, I wouldn't have cooked so much. Isn't this a waste? Rosalie picked up a rib, blew on it, and waved her hand. No waste, I can finish all of this by myself. That's true, you've always eaten a lot since you were little. It was only after you went to your aunt's house that you started being picky. Look how thin you are now, hardly any flesh on your face, and your arms are like bamboo sticks. Mary Atwood grumbled as she added a few more pieces of meat to Rosalie's bowl. Robert Atwood was not to be outdone, adding a large chopstick full of green vegetables, calling it a balanced diet. Looking at the bowl piled high like a small mountain, almost overflowing, and the table full of piping hot dishes, a trace of guilt inexplicably rose in Rosalie's heart. Her father was from Northwood City and had married her mother, who was born in Jiangcheng. She was their only daughter. When she was 16, doctors advised her mother, who couldn't adapt to the northern climate, to return to her hometown to recuperate. So, her father took his wife back to Jiangcheng, leaving Rosalie to board at her aunt's house to finish high school and then test back into a university in Jiangcheng. But because she had fallen in love with Julian Kingsley, she didn't listen to her parents and applied to an aviation university, staying in Northwood City after graduation. Thus, she and her parents had lived apart for 9 years, only now reunited. Looking at the graying hair at their temples and their increasingly wrinkled faces, Rosalie's nose tingled, and she almost burst into tears. She quickly lowered her head, hiding the emotion in her eyes, and put on a bright smile. I love Mom's cooking the most. I want to eat it for the rest of my life. If you like Mom's cooking, I'll make it for you every day. Chapter 18. After dinner, it was exactly 6 o'clock. Mary Atwood was drinking tea on the sofa, while Robert Atwood and Rosalie Atwood were in the kitchen washing dishes and tidying up. Robert, wiping grease stains from the counter, glanced at his daughter and hesitantly began, "Rosalie, your Uncle Lin asked me to ask you, what do you think of Laurie?" Rosalie's hand, rinsing a plate, paused for a second. She squinted, thinking carefully. Lawrence Irving? She remembered their reserved and polite first meeting 4 days ago, and then how they could already chat about past events during their interactions these past 2 days. Should that be considered rapid progress? She nodded slowly, her tone carrying a hint of uncertainty. He's very nice. Uncle Lin, why are you asking? Why? Of course, it's because he likes you, silly girl, and wants you to be his daughter-in-law. He was hoping you'd come back even when you were still in Northwood City. When he heard we were going to arrange blind dates for you, he immediately brought Laurie over, asking us to consider his son first. Your mom and I saw that he's distinguished and talented, eloquent and well-mannered, and his age is just right, so we thought he was good. We're not forcing you to get married this year. We just want you to get to know each other first, see if you click. Don't feel too much pressure. It's best if it works out, but if not, just consider him a friend. Rosalie could understand her parents' earnest efforts for her sake and didn't want them to worry too much, so she shared some of her thoughts. I know he is indeed very good, and I feel very comfortable and at ease when I'm with him. It's just that feelings can't be rushed. Both he and I need some time to confirm if we're suitable for each other. So, don't worry so much. Just relax, drink your tea, play chess, and accompany Mom to her square dancing. Having said what needed to be said, Robert knew his daughter had always been independent, so he didn't nag any further. He patted her shoulder and went downstairs with Mary to walk off their dinner. After putting the plates away in the cupboard, Rosalie returned to her bedroom. As soon as she picked up her phone, she saw a friend request notification. It was Julian Kingsley. She ignored it, walked to the window to close it, and immediately saw the 2 men waiting downstairs. They were too far away for her to see their expressions. But recalling what happened when she came back, her excellent mood felt like a drop of ink had fallen into clear water, no longer so pure. She drew the curtains, removed her makeup, took a hot shower, and only then washed away that bit of unpleasantness. Lying in her soft bed, Rosalie gradually felt drowsy and dozed off. When she woke up again, the light in her room had been turned off by her parents, who had returned at some point. The room was pitch black. She fumbled for her phone and turned it on, only to realize it was already 11 o'clock. The room felt a bit stuffy. Yawning, she got up and opened the window a little, only to find Julian and Sean Young still waiting downstairs. In this relationship, Rosalie considered herself to have acted with integrity from beginning to end, without wronging anyone. Her conscience was clear. What she wanted to say had already been said that afternoon. She didn't want to have any more involvement with them and simply pretended she hadn't seen them, lying back down on the bed. As soon as she opened WhatsApp, she noticed Lawrence Irving had sent a message 4 hours ago saying he'd arrived home safely. Out of politeness, she explained. "I got sleepy after dinner and didn't see the message. Could you please say hello to your parents for me tomorrow?" A few seconds later, a new message popped up. "I'll pass on your good wishes, but since you're awake now, you won't have trouble sleeping tonight, will you?" Insomnia was definitely a possibility, but Rosalie had already figured out how to pass the time. She took out the book she had bought at the bookstore yesterday and sent him a photo. "The gardening tips you mentioned the other day were very interesting. I was thinking of buying a few succulents for the house, so I bought a book to learn. It should help pass the time." Succulents. Are you planning to buy them online or offline? Offline, I think. I plan to go to the flower market the day after tomorrow. Rosalie typed her reply. Just as she sent it, a response came back instantly, as if he had been ready with it. "The day after tomorrow is Saturday. Would you like me to accompany you? We can go for tea in the afternoon as well." With a university biology lecturer accompanying her, Rosalie felt she probably wouldn't make any bad choices, so she agreed. Okay. Chapter 19, Rosalie Atwood only felt sleepy around 3 in the morning. At 10 the next day, the alarm she had set in advance woke her. She groggily got out of bed to find her parents had already left for work, and breakfast was being kept warm in the kitchen. After freshening up, Rosalie ate while reviewing her 2 interviews scheduled for the afternoon. One at 2 o'clock, another at 4:30, both within a half-hour journey from home. After checking the routes, she returned to her room, got ready, and began her preparations. At 1 in the afternoon, she went downstairs with her bag, only to find those 2 men still waiting, seemingly not having slept all night. As soon as he saw her, Julian Kingsley immediately stood up and blocked her path, his voice full of exhaustion and pleading. "Rosalie, can we talk, please?" Rosalie glanced at the time, her tone very flat. "Sorry, I have something to do, I don't have time." Rejected again, Julian froze on the spot. Seeing he wasn't moving out of the way, Rosalie didn't bother saying more, squeezed through the narrow passage to his left, and quickened her pace towards the complex entrance. Because she used some force, she bumped Julian's injured hand. The newly formed scab split open again, and seeping blood slowly stained the gauze red. But he seemed oblivious to the pain, staring unwaveringly at her retreating figure, his eyes filled with endless sorrow. Sean Young, who was so tired he was about to pass out, saw Julian's wound, jolted awake, and frantically took out medicine from his pocket. "King, your wound has opened up again, let's go to the hospital quickly." Julian paid no heed, brushing away Sean's hand that was trying to undo the bandage, and hurried after Rosalie. Seeing his unyielding demeanor, Sean sighed to the heavens about the misfortune and had no choice but to follow. The first interview ended at 3:30. As Rosalie came downstairs to hail a cab, she saw Julian, who had followed her at some point. He stood by the flower bed, staring straight at her, his eyes full of stubbornness. Sean, anxiously pacing beside him, saw her come down and quickly blocked her path. "My dear lady, you're finally done and down, you have time now, right? Seeing as his hand is injured like this, please, have a heart and persuade him to go to the hospital. I'm begging you." Rosalie listened, casually glancing at Julian's hand. After seeing the dark red patch, her gaze lingered for a few seconds, then quickly returned to normal. "Excuse me, I have another interview. Please let me pass." Hearing this, Sean's long-suppressed resentment finally erupted. "Rosalie Atwood, whatever grievances you have, can't you just take them out on me? King flew all the way to Jiangcheng for you with such a serious injury, and he hasn't slept for nearly 3 days. Can you please stop being angry with him? You've been together for 6 years, what can't you say openly?" For her. Hearing those two words, Rosalie inexplicably wanted to laugh. She lowered her head slightly, looking at the shadow beneath her, her voice ice cold. I believe that parting amicably is a principle that must be observed in a relationship. Julian Kingsley, what do you think? Feeling that cold gaze upon him, Julian's heart felt as if it had been stabbed, aching painfully. He clenched his fists tightly, his lips pressed together, forcefully suppressing those unwilling, painful emotions, his tone stiff and repressed. Sean, move. Sean hadn't expected them to reach this point, but Julian had spoken, so he could only reluctantly make way. Without a moment's hesitation, Rosalie stepped down the stairs, hailed a taxi, and drove off. Watching the car drive away, Julian felt a void in his heart. Endless desolation and disappointment surged up, completely engulfing him. He couldn't hold back anymore and slammed his fist onto the flower bed. Blood dripped down between his fingers. Drip, drip, drip. Chapter 20. After the second interview, Rosalie Atwood was relieved not to see those two men downstairs. She looked at the setting sun in the west, hesitating whether to eat out or go home, when her phone dinged. Interview over. How did it go? It was Lawrence Irving. Recalling the rather pleasant exchange, Rosalie felt it was pretty much in the bag and replied with a cute, okay, puppy emoji. Soon, a message came back. Since it went so well, let's celebrate. Let me treat you to dinner. Rosalie subconsciously wanted to refuse, but then she remembered that he had helped her get the referral for the second interview, and she felt it wouldn't be right. She deleted "That's too much trouble" and replaced it with "I should treat you," then sent it. Then I'd be honored to accept. Where are you? I can pick you up. Send me the address, wait a moment, and help me think about what to eat tonight. After sending the address, Rosalie opened Yelp and started searching for restaurants. She wasn't familiar with Jiangcheng, having only visited a few places with relatives during holidays, so she didn't know what to eat. After 20 minutes of searching, she decided to play it safe and try a Western restaurant. Just as she had booked a table, Lawrence sent a message saying he had arrived. She saw it and immediately got into the car. After fastening her seatbelt, she told him about the restaurant she had booked. Lawrence didn't rush to drive but took a small cake from the back seat and handed it to her, a gentle smile on his face. Didn't you say last time you'd had this cake before and liked it very much? I happened to pass by the shop and bought one for you. Try it and see if it still tastes the same. Rosalie hadn't expected him to remember something she had said so casually. She was pleasantly surprised and thanked him repeatedly. Although she hadn't eaten for a long time and was a bit hungry, she remembered that Lawrence seemed to be a bit of a germaphobe. So she didn't open the box but placed the cake on her lap, planning to eat it when they reached the restaurant. Seeing she made no move, a hint of surprise appeared in Lawrence's eyes, and he spoke warmly. You've had 2 interviews and didn't eat lunch. Aren't you hungry? Have a little something to tide you over, or you might get a stomachache. Before he finished speaking, Rosalie felt a slight pain in her stomach. She did indeed have some gastritis. She didn't want to go to the hospital and have her parents find out, so she didn't stand on ceremony any longer and opened the box. The sweet cream melted in her mouth, gradually suppressing the discomfort. She carefully finished the cake and then smiled as she chatted with Lawrence about the taste. It still tastes the same, very delicious. If you like it, I'll bring it for you often in the future. It was a very ordinary sentence, but Rosalie heard a different meaning in it. Her ears turned red instantly. Just as she was about to say she was sorry to trouble him, they arrived at their destination. The car stopped. She opened the car door and got out, looked at the large sign, and found their table number. Number 98, they're at 96 now. It'll be our turn soon. Lawrence nodded, turning his head as if to say something, but then he saw a little cream on the corner of her lip. He took a handkerchief from his pocket, hesitated for more than 10 seconds, and then handed it to her. There's a little cream on your face, wipe it off. The redness on Rosalie's ears instantly spread to her face, and a flash of embarrassment crossed her eyes. She took the handkerchief, and just as she was about to open her phone camera, Lawrence held his phone up in front of her. She froze for a moment, then quickly understood his kind gesture, hurriedly wiped the cream off, and said thank you again. Lawrence didn't dwell on this small matter. He extended his hand towards her, smiling gently and elegantly. Give me the handkerchief. I'll clean it. Rosalie was initially a bit embarrassed, but thinking of his germophobia, she folded the handkerchief neatly and handed it back. calling customer number 98 to the third floor for dining. Hearing the number called, Rosalie quickly put these little episodes behind her. As she walked upstairs, she turned back and waved at him. "It's our turn." Looking at the radiant smile on her face, Lawrence touched the soft silk handkerchief in his palm and followed her. Chapter 21. At 8 in the evening, the sky was overcast with dark clouds, and a dusty, acrid, heavy feeling hung in the air, as if it were about to rain. Sean Young, sporting heavy dark circles under his eyes, checked the weather forecast and spoke wearily. "King, the doctor said this afternoon that you need rest. It's going to rain tonight. Just come back to the hotel with me, all right? You can look for Rosalie Atwood again tomorrow." Julian Kingsley's eyes remained fixed on the doorway as he answered in a hoarse voice, "If you're tired, go rest. Don't worry about me. I know my limits." This was knowing his limits? Sean complained endlessly. Knowing he couldn't persuade Julian, he resignedly went to a nearby store to buy some food and rain gear. Just as he went in, Julian saw the familiar sedan appear in his line of sight. Remembering the man he had seen that day, his nerves tensed, and an air of strong aggression emanated from him. Sure enough, a moment later, Rosalie got out of the car. Seeing the smile on her lips, 100 times brighter than yesterday's, Julian felt as if his heart was blocked, unable to breathe. The painful emotions suppressed for days were on the verge of collapse, and the blows kept coming. Robert and Mary Atwood, who happened to be returning from a walk, saw the two of them and greeted them with smiles. The four of them stood together, talking and laughing. An uninformed observer might have mistaken them for a family of four. Robert patted Lawrence Irving's shoulder, his tone full of admiration. "Laurie, your father told me you're very good at chess. When you have time, come to our place and play a few games with Uncle. Since Uncle has invited, how about tomorrow evening? I'm going to the flower market with Miss Atwood during the day, and I'll bring her back in the evening, just in time to play chess with Uncle." Hearing that they would meet again tomorrow, both elderly parents beamed with joy and repeatedly agreed. Mary clapped her hands and smiled at Lawrence. "You've known each other for so long, don't call her Miss Atwood anymore, it's too formal. We all call her Rosalie, you should too." Lawrence's eyes lit up, but he didn't presume to change the form of address. Instead, he looked at Rosalie, as if seeking her opinion. Rosalie was feeling embarrassed by her parents' overly familiar nature. Sensing his questioning gaze, she quickly put on a proper yet polite smile. "Yes, just call me Rosalie. Then should I also change how I address you? What would be better? My family all call me Laurie. If you don't mind, you can call me that too." Switching from a polite form of address to such an intimate nickname, Rosalie genuinely felt a bit unaccustomed. But under her parents' expectant gazes, she could only bite the bullet and say it. "Okay, then from now on, Laurie it is." Seeing this harmonious scene, Julian was so angry he could have ground his teeth to dust, wishing he could rush out immediately and declare his identity. But he still retained a sliver of rationality. He knew that appearing now would only leave an irrevocably terrible impression on Mr. and Mrs. Atwood. Not to mention, he and Rosalie were currently in a breakup Cold War. What use was the identity of an ex-boyfriend? He could only forcefully suppress the feelings of unwillingness and jealousy in his heart, watching everything from the shadows. After another 10 minutes of pleasantries, the two groups finally said their goodbyes. Rosalie linked arms with her mother and slowly walked home. Robert took the bag from his daughter's hand and asked about her interviews that day. "How were the interviews? Do you need to work overtime? You should have normal days off on weekends, right? If it's too demanding, don't go. Your mother and I just hope you can stay healthy and be with us. There's no need to wear yourself out just to earn a little money." Rosalie was just about to speak when her peripheral vision caught the person standing under the tree. She frowned. Why was he still here? Chapter 22, Rosalie Atwood didn't want to be endlessly entangled with Julian Kingsley. The thought of making things clear with him slowly grew in her mind. She made an excuse for her parents to go back first. Then, under his intense gaze, she proactively walked up to him and spoke first. "Whatever you want to say, make it clear now. I'll give you 10 minutes. After you're done, go back. Don't appear in front of me again." Hearing the first sentence, Julian thought he had grasped a sliver of hope. After hearing the second, he knew he hadn't grasped hope, but a straw as thin as a thread. But no matter what it was, he just wanted to grab onto it now and never let go. So he didn't delay a second, saying everything he had been thinking for a long time. Rosalie, on your birthday, didn't you say you wanted to get married? I know you said it for me to hear. I just needed some time to think it over properly. Now I've thought it through. I want to marry you. Are you willing to give me another chance to build a family with me? These were words Rosalie had once dreamed of hearing. Before knowing the truth, she had fantasized countlessly about Julian proposing, about what style of wedding dress they would choose, about what their married life would be like. But all of this was a long, long time ago. Even hearing the words, "marry you," directly from Julian's lips, Rosalie felt no ripple in her heart. She looked up at the light that suddenly switched on in the sixth-floor apartment, a gentle smile on her face. She understood more clearly than ever that her home was not in the unattainable tomorrow, nor in distant Northwood City. It was where her eyes could see, in her hands. So she shook her head and replied to him in an incredibly sincere tone. I'm not willing, and I don't want to marry you, Julian Kingsley. You have someone you love, a family background that is far beyond my reach. We are not from the same world. I have completely let go of my 8-year obsession. You should let me go too. Every word fell on Julian's ears, plunging his fluctuating heart completely into an abyss. He never imagined Rosalie already knew he was in love with Sylvia Monroe. He instantly lost his composure and hurriedly explained. No, that's not it, Rosalie. I did like Sylvia before, but that's all in the past. I've let her go now. I just want to be with you. It was wrong of me to hide it from you before. I apologize. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me this one time? Rosalie didn't need this apology. She had loved the wrong person, been deceived. She willingly admitted her mistake. But this didn't mean she would wallow in the past. She could pick things up, and she could put them down. She wouldn't linger for someone unworthy after knowing the truth. Since she had already walked out of the confusing mountains that had trapped her for 8 years, she wouldn't turn back. She had a firm and fearless heart, so she wouldn't be moved by his meaningless words. She looked at him, a relieved and relaxed expression on her face. You've let go of Sylvia Monroe, so you should be able to empathize with the feeling of a dead heart, right? Since you wouldn't repeat your own mistakes, why must you insist on giving me another chance? Julian Kingsley, I am not a backup waiting for you to come back, nor am I your fallback for unrequited love. I am a living person. I have the right to choose my own life. And you are now the past that I have given up on. Do you understand what I mean? Chapter 23, Julian Kingsley understood, but he just wanted to play dumb. He couldn't accept the fact that she had moved on, shaking his head desperately, his face full of pain and despair. I don't understand, Rosalie. Please don't say such things, okay? For the second time, Rosalie Atwood saw such a vulnerable and helpless expression on his face. She remembered the last time was on the day she found out the truth. She had dazedly helped a drunk Julian Kingsley home. He had hugged her and called out Sylvie all night. When dawn broke, he had fallen asleep and her heart had completely died. It had only been a little over a month, but thinking back now, it felt so distant, like something that had happened in a previous life. Time truly was the best medicine for healing wounds. Faced with his unreasonable plea for her to stay, Rosalie's heart remained unmoved. She calmly lowered her head, looked at the wound on his right hand, and spoke softly. Denial doesn't change anything, nor can it hide the wounds that once existed, and it certainly can't overturn the fact that I no longer love you. Julian Kingsley, for the sake of the 8 years I genuinely liked you, please don't disturb me anymore. After speaking, Rosalie took one last look at Julian, who was now speechless. Tears welled up in his slightly reddened eyes, but she didn't care why his tears were flowing. A light rain began to fall from the sky. She didn't linger any longer and jogged into the residential complex. She ran further and further away, and the rain fell harder and harder. Cold raindrops landed on Julian's face, mixing with warm tears and rolling down, soaking his clothes and his wound. Blood dripped down again. The rain fell all night without stopping. Rosalie Atwood woke up from a night's sleep, thinking she would have to cancel today's plans, but then the sky suddenly cleared. She picked up her phone and saw a message from Lawrence Irving, saying he was already on his way. She quickly got up and got ready, rushing around, and finally managed to get downstairs just as he parked. The air after the rain was very fresh. The elderly men doing their morning exercises were gathered together, discussing someone who had fainted downstairs late last night. Rosalie, rushing out, didn't hear any of this. She hurried to the entrance and saw Lawrence waiting by the car. He waved at her. After she ran over, he handed her the warm breakfast he had bought in advance. "Uncle Robert said you like soy milk and siumai, so I bought them from the place I think is the best. See if they suit your taste." Rosalie hadn't expected him to find out even such small details. Besides being surprised, she was also quite touched. Translator's note: change to Western breakfast in line with cultural adaptation instructions for consistency. He handed her a warm coffee and a pastry. "Your dad mentioned you like a good coffee and a fresh pastry in the morning, so I got these from my favorite bakery. See if you like them." After finishing breakfast, the two of them set off for the flower market. Because the journey was long, they chatted idly, talking about everything from family matters to workplace gossip, from childhood embarrassments to future plans. When the conversation turned to mate selection and views on love, Rosalie finally couldn't help but ask him a question that had been on her mind for a long time. "Laurie, you're 3 years older than me. Why haven't you gotten married yet, ending up in the same boat as me, being pushed into blind dates?" Lawrence knew she was just curious, but he still paused for a second. He turned to look at her, a gentle expression in his eyes. "I was busy with my studies before. After graduating from university, I went straight into a PhD program. After graduating last year, I was busy with work, so it got delayed. To be precise, I've never been that concerned about love and marriage. I always feel that life has infinite possibilities, and there's no need to limit one's perspective to marriage and family. So my thinking is, if I meet someone I like and who is suitable, we'll be together. If there's really no fate, being alone is also fine." A PhD indeed, his perspective was so broad. Rosalie marveled at his views on marriage and love and casually asked another question. "So, now that you've changed your mind and agreed to blind dates, have you found someone suitable?" As soon as the words left her mouth, Rosalie realized something was wrong. She was just about to say something to correct herself when she heard a firm and calm voice beside her. Only 2 words, but they made her heart pound. Of course. Chapter 24, Julian Kingsley refused to listen to advice and insisted on waiting downstairs in the rain for Rosalie Atwood to change her mind. As a result, just as it struck midnight, he couldn't hold on any longer and fainted. Sean Young rushed him to the hospital overnight. After an examination, the doctor said the wound was infected and told him to quickly transfer Julian to Northwood City First Hospital. Sean was so scared he almost fainted himself, tremblingly calling the Kingsley family to explain the situation. At 3 in the morning, Julian, with a persistent high fever, was put on a plane back to Northwood City. Before dawn the next day, he was in the operating room. But just an hour after he went in, the doctor hurried out and brought devastating news. The wound infection is severe. With the current medical standards in the country, to save his life, we have to amputate his right hand. If you have the resources, sending him to Europe now might offer a chance to save the hand. Eleanor Kingsley fainted on the spot upon hearing this. Richard Kingsley's face also turned pale, but he remained relatively calm. He immediately contacted people to arrange a plane and made many calls to doctors in Europe. That afternoon, Julian was sent abroad. Richard accompanied him. 3 days later, after the doctor's efforts, Julian's right hand was saved. However, all the nerves had died, and he could no longer control his fingers. Simply put, it could only serve as a decoration. The Kingsley family did not consider this good news. Because the rain had caused a systemic infection, Julian remained unconscious in the intensive care unit after the surgery. The doctors said the situation was very grim. Even if he woke up, there would be many complications that would require slow treatment. It was a long and difficult treatment process, and indeed, things unfolded as the doctors had predicted. Julian woke up on the 3rd day after the surgery, but abnormalities appeared all over his body. He had to undergo numerous tests daily, take various medications, and be monitored 24 hours a day. Time passed day by day. The brief spring passed, followed by a long summer. After listening to the cicadas chirp for over 5 months in the hospital, on the day of the white dew, solar term early September, Julian Kingsley was finally discharged. After leaving the hospital, he boarded a flight back to his country. Throughout the journey, he watched the drifting white clouds outside the window, not resting. His face, ravaged by medication and so thin he was almost unrecognizable, showed no expression. During this time, he had grown accustomed to the feeling of pain. Now, suddenly returning to a sub-healthy state, he actually felt a bit unaccustomed. After the plane landed in Northwood City, his former group of buddies all rushed to the airport to pick Julian up. Seeing his current haggard and weary appearance, everyone showed pained expressions, racking their brains for various topics to try and cheer him up. It's unknown which tactless person suddenly brought up Sylvia Monroe. King, Sylvia Monroe, and that Chancellor guy got married half a month ago. They even sent an invitation over, but don't worry, none of us went. Hearing this, the atmosphere in the car instantly turned cold. Sean shot the clueless person a glare, just about to say something to change the subject, when Julian suddenly spoke. So they got married, big deal. Seeing his completely indifferent attitude, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Sean thought that after walking through death's door, Julian had seen through the vanity of the world and let go of the past, so he casually mentioned, "Exactly, so they got married. Who doesn't get married when they reach that age? Isn't Rosalie Atwood also getting married soon?" Someone's phone smashed onto the floor. Thud. Chapter 25, Rosalie Atwood and Lawrence Irving's wedding was set for the day of Frost's descent, late October, a day said to be auspicious for all endeavors. Julian Kingsley flew to Jiangcheng a day early and sat alone in his hotel room all night. At 10 the next morning, he changed into a suit and went to the wedding venue alone. The person collecting gift money was from Lawrence's side and didn't recognize him, asking for his name. He didn't give his name, only saying it was a collective gift from classmates, and asked them to just note, "high school classmate." After watching those words being written down, Julian took out a card from his pocket and, under the astonished gazes of the crowd, said calmly, "The pin Miss Atwood knows. Please tell her she must accept it. This is a small token from us old classmates. I wish her happiness." The wedding was held at a hotel halfway up a mountain. The hall was surrounded by a sea of pink roses, filled with laughter and joyous chatter everywhere. Julian randomly found an empty table and sat down, quietly waiting for the ceremony to begin. At 12 o'clock, the wedding began on time. Rosalie, wearing a beautiful wedding dress, walked down the aisle on her father's arm amidst thunderous applause. Robert Atwood personally handed his daughter over to Lawrence Irving. Julian also saw Rosalie's face, full of happiness. Her lips constantly curved into a smile, and she looked a little nervous, frequently glancing at the groom beside her. Lawrence, noticing her emotions, would always offer her an incredibly gentle smile whenever she turned her head. The two stood under the spotlight, facing their closest family and friends, solemnly exchanging vows of lifelong commitment and growing old together. After exchanging wedding rings, everyone started cheering, urging the newlyweds to kiss. The moment Lawrence lifted the veil, Julian stood up and left the venue. No one noticed his departure. Everyone was busy celebrating the new couple. He walked out of the hotel alone and had the driver take him up the winding mountain road. In late autumn, the lush green mountaintop had completely changed its appearance, adorned in new clothes of orange, red, and yellow. The wind scattered the remaining leaves hanging on the branches, sending them fluttering towards the roadside, finally depositing a red maple leaf on the windshield wiper. Looking at the fallen leaf before him, Julian had the driver pull over and rolled down the window. The cold wind rushed in, blowing away the hair that covered his eyes, revealing his slightly reddened eye sockets. Perhaps it was the wind and dust irritating his eyes. A wave of tears surged up, and he quickly shut his eyes tightly. Darkness enveloped him, but some memories uncontrollably flooded his mind. It was this time last year. He had finished his flight from Australia to Northwood City early and returned to the apartment, chilled to the bone. The lights in the living room were off, but the bedroom light was still on. He thought Rosalie had fallen asleep waiting for him again and deliberately lightened his footsteps. When he reached the door, he realized she wasn't asleep yet and was on the phone with someone. He didn't know who it was on the other end, but her tone was very happy, filled with joyful laughter. "I want to get married next year, but I don't know if my wish will come true. Do you think Jules will want to wait a few more years to get married? Maybe I should wait a few more years for him. Getting married as soon as you reach the legal age does sound a bit ridiculous. For the wedding, I want it to be in autumn, preferably on a mountain. I think it's quiet there, and the scenery and weather are good in autumn. Completing the most important ceremony of my life in such a beautiful season, marrying the person I love most, should be a memory I'll never forget for the rest of my life. To this day, Julian still remembered the unconcealable longing and anticipation in her voice. He could even imagine her lying in bed, her feet dangling, twirling her hair with her fingers. It was a scene he had witnessed countless times, hence deeply ingrained in his memory. At that time, he had only thought it was ordinary. Times had changed, and everything had become a thing of the past in the west wind, only for reminiscence. He and Rosalie could never go back to how things were. The guilt and regret that kept him restless would eventually become a hidden pain he could never let go of for the rest of his life. And Rosalie's awaited proposal and wedding, her longed-for future and happiness, had all come true. It was just that the protagonist had changed. But what did that matter? As long as she was happy. Tears finally broke through his defenses, sliding down the scar on his face. Seeing his boss cry, the driver was also at a loss for a moment. He pondered for a long time and finally quietly opened the car door and got out. In the narrow car, only a barely audible song remained, and an unending stream of sobs. You and I, we did not meet before the mountain. After the mountain, let us not meet again.